bubble that essentially pops before they get there in terms of audience interest.
I think that we're risking the superhero bubble popping after the next Avengers movie.
That's
Because
fair.
I mean, if a bunch of the heroes aren't coming back and it really does feel like the end of an era,
Hmm.
right? Like it's the end of this thing that we've been building to for I don't even how many years have we
10.
been going on this?
Yep,
10?
it's 10 years. Yep,
Yeah. Like it's crazy.
it
So
is crazy. Yeah, I hope to have a talk with our we call him the superintendent of the More Than One Lesson faculty, Tyler Smith. I hope to have a talk with him about like the implications of the MCU experiment for like cinema in general, and like just what this whole thing actually means, sort of in just the wider like genre of film. Um, but I am. I understand the concerns that you guys have both brought up just now. I am hopeful because because precisely because we have had 10 years and 18 now 19 movies worth of really really quality material, and even the stuff that's not as well thought of is still very very solid on its own terms.
Right.
Like I I don't know that I actually see this, going away anytime soon. Because as long as they continue to make good movies that people like people are gonna go see them. Like even terrible movies that are awful and never should have been made, make tons of money and people go to see.
That
Like
is that is
all of
very
the
true.
Transformers movies are garbage.
I like some of them, so
The first one was okay the first time I watched it. I really liked it. I liked it a lot the first time I watched it. And then the second time I watched it, I realized like this is really dumb. Like this isn't a very good movie.
well, it is Michael Bay, so like there's that, and so there's
Yeah,
a certain
there's
level of
that.
expectation or non-expectation because it's Michael Bay. But getting back to what you were talking about with kind of what we expect to see coming, one of the things that I'm wondering about is Black Panther 2. We know it's coming. We're not quite sure when it'll happen, but
Yeah.
when you look at the fact that in Infinity War in the film, Wakanda gets invaded by Thanos and the Black Order, and this is the first time that theoretically this is the first time that Wakanda has successfully been invaded, and there are echoes of some of the like Infinity Run, Jonathan Hickman uh, pieces of Avengers, and that whole run from the comics that are echoed in some of what we see in Infinity War. And then shortly after that, if memory serves, as far as Black Panther goes, they get into the Ta-Nehisi Coates run that I think is still might even still be going. So I'm wondering whether, with part of what they're doing with the Infinity War film and some of the influences that they're pulling from, whether or not they're setting up Black Panther 2 to pull more directly from the more recent Ta-Nehisi Coates run for Black Panther. I don't know, but it's just something I'm thinking about.
hmm.
Well, I hope that they remain true to form in the way that, and this is going to be tedious because I say this in almost every episode, but in the way that they have effectively portrayed the heart of these characters in the films and have not been slavishly faithful to the events as they played out in the original comic stories.
Fair.
Yeah. I think one of the things that I'm kind of looking forward to is with Marvel reattaining the rights to the X-Men Spider-Man and all of that stuff. Like, we're going to have a lot more involvement, hopefully, from some of that going forward.
I hope we do, because I read a story just today that Comcast apparently is trying to outbid Disney for the rights to all of that Fox cinematic IP that includes the Fantastic Four and the X-Men. So that it's by no means a sure thing yet that all of those rights will in fact revert to Marvel and or its parent company.
And not only is Comcast making a bid, but the last thing that I heard, I think as of yesterday, was that they're attempting to make the bid in all cash, as opposed to like cash plus stock options or anything like that. Like, I mean, they want to put it forward. They want to try and get it done. And what also is kind of a wrinkle in all of this is some sort of merger that looks to be happening between like Time Warner and AT&T in order to try to fight off, Verizon and people like that. So like there's a lot of different moving pieces in this right now that may determine whether or not it actually happens. Whereas a month, 2 months ago, when it was first announced, we all thought it was a done deal and okay, here we go, let's rock and roll, and now it's not.
Yeah. Well, and as I understand it, the whole deal also hinges upon at least one regulatory body that has to approve that deal in terms of it, being or not being too much of a monopoly.
Right. I think the DOJ is somewhat involved, the Department of Justice.
Yeah.
In terms of like their antitrust division.
Yep. Okay, one other little bit of speculation that I wanted to include because it's a really, really cool idea, and if it goes down, then I will dig it a lot. Aaron, our friend Rich Denius, thought that maybe at the end of Ant-Man and the Wasp, that one of them will go out and go to dust, and that's gonna like link it up with Infinity War.
I completely agree with Rich. I was talking about that with some folks shortly after the movie came out. I'm expecting something similar. Maybe not exactly that, but I am expecting Ant-Man and the Wasp to run right into Infinity War and set up whatever Ant-Man and the Wasp roles will be in the next Avengers film. So I'm on with that.
Yeah, I'm really interested to see how they end up tying the end of this season of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Into this as well. Are we gonna end up losing half of our S.H.I.E.L.D. team? It'll be interesting to see.
John, do you think that that's actually genuine, or do you think that the tie-ins they're trying to do in this season with Infinity War feel kind of forced? Because in the first two seasons, you had these natural tie-ins, and they used to use that hashtag, it's all connected all the time, and then they stopped doing it, and now at the end they feel like they need to start doing it again. I'm not quite sure what to think about it.
I don't know. Rob, are you keeping up with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.? Have you been watching that show?
No, I have not been following Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Right. Sorry, I was looking for an opportunity to give you something else to do. But I think that they can't not tie it in. Like, it's Infinity War. It's the culmination of the entire MCU. It has to tie in, to Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And I think if it doesn't, if we don't get some, echoes of the events of Infinity War at the end of this season of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., it will be a really like badly missed opportunity, because it'll just be another sort of like reinforcing of how big a deal it was for Thanos to have succeeded.
Okay, I'll buy that. I just don't know if they're going to be willing to theoretically kill off half the cast.
Yeah. Well, we'll have to see how it goes.
I have been keeping up with the Netflix Marvel series, and I have a really difficult time picturing them working that into.
Yeah, see, that's a little bit of a different. That's a little bit of a different thing. I think they don't need to tie it in to the Netflix series nearly as much, because those are so self-contained. They'll probably, and again, once again, like, we have to understand that, like, we've literally only seen half of the movie at this point,
right?
And, and the degree to which any of the events of Infinity War are going to continue to have ramifications in the MCU at large is something that we're simply not going to know until this time next year.
Absolutely true.
Yep.
Yeah, in the instance of the Netflix shows, like, all of them do make reference to the first Avengers movie in terms of, like, the incident in New York.
Right. Yes, they do. Yep.
So because they all take place there. So
right, and it still takes place in the same universe, but in terms of, like, what actually goes down in those stories, like, it's all very localized.
And that's why it's so difficult to picture them, being tied in at all.
Yeah, I see that. Yep.
John,
all right. Well, go ahead, Aaron. Yeah.
Do you have any speculation as to, so with Captain Marvel, if it happens in the 90s and this is now, 2019 when that movie comes out and when the next Avengers comes out, I know one of the big questions is, okay, where's she been all this time? What's
as far as I don't know. I know some things about this character. I don't know everything about the character. There is no established, like, thing in the comics of her having gone away or anything like that for a period of time. So I don't have any sense of how this is going to be tied into the movies, and, like, where has she been and where will she come back from and how this is all going to go down. I just don't know.
Okay.
And that's kind of great. Like, I love that. Like, it's great that, like, even though, like, all the comics nerds, like, know so much about these characters, like, that doesn't mean that we know anything about what's going to happen in the films. And that's fantastic.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, I feel like most of my contact with Captain Marvel has been her as a side character in other people's stories.
And for a long time, she really was. Like, she didn't really come into prominence until the aftermath of House of M, where in that sort of rewritten reality, she was one of the world's greatest heroes. And in the aftermath of that, she sort of looks at her life and says, why am I not one of the world's greatest heroes in this reality? And so she sets out to become that. And that sort of quest of sort of personal betterment and being all that she can be has sort of been the major arc of Carol Danvers, for the last 10 years or so in the comics.
Yeah, I feel like it just leaves the window open for, like you were saying, we don't really know what we're going to get from Captain Marvel, I don't think.
Yeah. Well, what I can expect from the movie is a great performance. I watched the movie Room specifically because I knew that it had Brie Larson in it, and she's a heck of an actress.
Yeah, I know her mainly from her role in Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. She plays Scott Pilgrim's ex-girlfriend who ends up dating one of...
was she Ramona?
No, she played Envy.
Okay.
She was the one who was the lead singer in the band, The Clash at Demon Head, and she was dating the guitarist in the band, Todd, who had previously dated Ramona. So they had the
It's
whole.
been a long time since I've seen the movie.
They had the whole bass battle that Scott loses very badly.